What is alienation? The term alienation is used widely, and in a number of different senses, but always connotes a sense of loss, or estrangement. In property law, it refers to a transfer, or loss of ownership. In psychology, the word alienation was used to mean insanity, or the loss of mental faculties. In fact, in the mid-19th century, the term alienist replaced the earlier, mad doctor. That usage is now archaic in English, but the equivalent terms still survive in the Romance languages. The modern meaning of alienation derives mainly from the early writings of Marx, and especially from his Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844, which was first published in Moscow in 1932. Marx's theory of alienation owes much to the Hegelian and neo-Hegelian traditions in German philosophy. As is well known, in his seminal work titled The Phenomenology of Mind, Hegel describes the unhappy consciousness typical of philosophical skepticism as an alienated soul, which is conscious of itself as a divided being, or a doubled and contradictory being whose aspirations towards universality have been frustrated. In his Essence of Christianity, the neo-Hegelian, Ludwig Feuerbach, argues that the Christian God is a projection of a human essence that has been alienated, or abstracted from human being, objectified and turned into an object of worship. Most subsequent descriptions of alienation combine the themes of estrangement and division with that of the inversion of a natural order. For Marx, alienation is a characteristic feature of modern capitalism, and of the commodity fetishism, whose devaluation of a human world is proportional to its overvaluation of things. More specifically, the Marxist conception of the term alienation suggests that, because he does not own it, the product of the worker's labor appears to take on an alien and threatening life of its own. The labor process is, therefore, experienced not as a joyful act of creation, but as a loss of reality. Hence, the worker who creates the object of labor both loses it, and becomes a slave to it, whilst the employer's appropriation of the product is experienced as estrangement and alienation. As we can see, the alienation of labor estranges human beings from their own bodies, from the natural world, and from their potentially universal essence. Hence, the abolition of the private ownership of the means of production, and of the commodity system is, according to Marx, a prerequisite for the overcoming of alienation, and for the emergence of a truly human society. Ever since their publication, the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844, also known as the Paris Manuscripts, because they were written in Paris when Marx was in exile there, have been of major importance to the tradition of Western Marxism, and particularly to George Lukács and some of those associated with the Frankfurt School who, like Marcuse, tend to use the related term reification, rather than alienation. The great attraction of the manuscripts is that they appear to provide the theoretical basis for a socialist humanism, and for a critique of a dogmatic dialectical materialism associated with Stalinism. Marx's theory of alienation is also a major influence on Guy Debord's caustic descriptions of the society of the spectacle. In contrast, in his attacks on humanism, Louis Althusser argues that alienation is part of a pre-Marxist, or Feuerbachian problematic, and that the scientific work of the mature Marx, and especially the Capital, departs from that problematic thanks to a decisive epistemological break.